What's up, everybody? Welcome to day 26 of the I'm Curious to Know project. 26 days in a row of amazing conversations with world-class athletes, innovators, and unique personalities from the endurance sports world. I'm stoked to have today's guest with me. It's been a long time coming. We caught up a little bit before the call, but my memory of first meeting Lucas, I'm going to share with you. We were sitting outside Whole Foods at the 29th, I think it's the 29th Ave or 29th Street Mall in the Whole Foods there. Alex Diebold, who was a guest on the show, and I were sitting there having a coffee, and Lucas walks out and Alex says, "Oh, Lucas, come over here and meet Travis." And then I have this feeling of energy. I can kind of get a sense of someone's energy. I was like, I like that guy. We spoke for about a minute, and I'm like, I actually really like that guy. I want to get to know him at some point. So fast forward however many years later, and here we are. Lucas, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Travis. We had the same memory. It was in the sense of just that I remember meeting you, and I remember the energetic connection. I didn't recall exactly where. And then I've been following you ever since, as if we've known each other our whole lives. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for being here. I think that's a bit of the joy of social media as well, is, we had that brief interaction. I follow you. I'm able to comment on stuff you're doing. And it's like, feeling like I do know you and I have a window into your world. So I think that's one of the positives of the connections we're able to have across all these channels.
I agree. One of the positives. You got to weigh the positives and negatives on this one. Yeah.
Right. Now, May 26 is a pretty impactful day in your history. I had to actually bring it up to you. So there is a memory that I want to talk about, or an incident I want to talk about, where you and Taylor Finney, leading the US national champs 4 years ago, May 26th in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And
6 years ago.
2014. You're right.
Yeah, time goes by fast.
Absolutely. You're leading the race. Taylor crashes in front of you. You're able to kind of keep it together. Your bike takes the brunt of the incident. And then you've described that moment as a moment where your life kind of spiraled out of control, or it spiraled away from your understanding of what life had been up until that point.
I mean, that's so eloquently put. I don't know if we need to keep going, but it was such an impactful moment in my life, and I didn't know why then, and I was so lost right after it happened. But to look back on it now, it was the beginning of who I am today, versus the ending of something I was.
Mm-hmm. And to give some context there, you describe yourself as a reformed pro cyclist. Remind me of your terminology there.
Recovered pro cyclist.
Recovered pro cyclist. You describe yourself as a recovered pro cyclist, and I think that I want to get into that journey and talk a little bit more about that. But I'm really curious to know, can you give some context on your career? You raced for 11 years. You raced all over the world. It was somewhat unexpected. You're out of college, go to Europe, start racing your bike. Tell me a bit more about what that career was like for you.
Of course. It was for so many people, it's a dream, right? It's something you work for, and it's something you're going after, and then it happens. Okay, I'm here. For me, it was always like this side thing that was just like I loved to do, and I guess it wasn't a lack of believing in my talent. It was like that's never going to happen. I'm not going to be that person that is a professional cyclist. I'm not good enough, or I a little bit of self-doubt or whatever it may have been at the time. So I just kept plugging away. I kept having fun of the sport, but I also knew that there was another side of me. There was Lucas, the human being, that was kind of going about his coming of age story and going to university and getting my degree. And even when I got that first pro contract, I still was like, no, I need to focus on these other things, because I don't fully believe it yet. I remember Waters was like, okay, training camp is February. And I'm like, cool, I can't go. I have school. I have finals that week. And he's like, wait, what? you can't not go to training camp. I was like, and I can't not finish my finals. So, and he's like, okay, fine, come. I think I could maybe come for like the last day or two or something like that. But I was always putting those things first until finally, like, this magic happened. And it's like, here's your pro contract. Like, here's where you're going to live in Girona, Spain. We are going to go do this. And at that point I was like, all right, let's go. I'm all in.
Yeah.
It just took a little coercing and took a little bit of time.
What was that distinction for you to say, okay, I'm all in? Was it, was it a decision you had to make to say, I'm going to set some of these things aside? Was it a commitment to pursuing your talent and maybe letting go of some of those self-beliefs? What was that distinction for you that made you say, okay, I was all in?
I think it was this series of things that narrowed down of like, I wanted to be this generalist. Like I wanted to know everything, but to be a professional athlete, you have to just do one thing really well. And I think it was a series of letting go of all those other things. And then finally getting to the point of like, now it's time to focus. And that is also a product of my personality of like, I need to get to a place of 100% focus on one thing in order to be the best that I possibly can. And so it was just a series of those that got me there. There was the physical act of signing a pro contract, getting your first paycheck, getting your first like kit, your free bike, all these things that like I just was like, this is so odd, right? This is such a not a normal path. Like I was a kid at like 15 who had the hand-me-down bike with size 46 shoes that was stuffed with newspaper. Showed up for my first ride in 50 degrees and raining with like just shorts and a jersey. So I'm like, this is awesome. I love doing this, right? But I just like, I had never had that experience of just like, oh my God, this is how you get treated as a professional, which was everything was taken care of. Everything was taken care of for you. And I think that the tangible pieces was like the most mesmerizing, right? And then like the act of moving to Europe and all these things, I was like, okay, it's in motion. I'm not going to stop the train. I still don't know where it's going. Let's get on.
Yeah. Tell me about some of those early days that you're getting into the sport. Like, did you have mentors? Did you have people kind of helping you along that journey, or was it a bit of figure it out for yourself?
That's a great question. I came up in a really weird era in the sport. As we all know now, didn't know at the time, there was this transition happening in the sport that was behind the scenes of like the old era, the old guard, if you will, into this new generation. We were kind of this middle generation. Sometimes I call us the lost boys, but it's like this group of us that was stuck kind of right in the middle of what we see now as this kind of flourishing young generation and the old guard. So even if I looked to the older generation as role models, I looked to them for advice, but there was something going on and I didn't know at the time that they weren't giving me what I needed. So I turned to positive role models in my life that I had always had. For the most part, I kind of went about it on my own, but I did come from a really solid local cycling community. So I had a really good path to there. Right. Yeah. And once I got there, I was in a really good space.
Yeah. Tell me about that kind of that lost boys, that middle generation feeling. It's very topical now, obviously, with Lance's 30 for 30 coming out. And I'm guessing that's kind of the era and the guard you're referring to is that group of people. Tell me about how can you reconcile that experience now, knowing what happened, knowing, how things may have been different. But also the opportunities that were generated from that old guard that may not have existed if they didn't exist. So I think there's this dichotomy of thoughts there. Tell me what how you reconcile that in your own mind.
I mean, I looking back now, I would have done everything exactly the same, right? Like I would not have changed a thing because it was such an amazing experience. And we learn from all of these mistakes and we move on, we persevere. There's so many amazing things to learn from that era. And I couldn't control what happened before me, right? And I was part of this transition for a reason, right? And I guess I like to think that like we just helped to usher it into this new phase. And yeah, I mean we all know what happened with the 30 for 30 happening now. It's obviously prevalent again. But I do think that there is this moment in time where we can reflect and we can reflect on the positive and we can reflect on the negative. But looking forward, there's such an amazing crop of Americans and just the next generation of cycling. Like look at who's winning right now, right? At least before we all shut down, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's 19-year-old kids, 21-year-old kids winning the Tour de France, right? Like that's something that never would have happened before. And that is a generational shift, right? That like we have seen it, it's happened, it's here. And it's really exciting for the sport. So all the stuff that happened before was just got us to where we are today. So who's to say that if it was different, we'd be in a good or bad place right now? We don't know.
Yeah.
So I was just part of that. I was just part of that whole machine, just turning over. And it was, I didn't know what I was doing at the time, and I couldn't change the timing of what I did. Right.
Yeah. I love that perspective. It seems you're at peace with it. Maybe you weren't in the past. I don't know, but you definitely sound like you're at peace with the whole experience that you had in cycling now.
Yeah, I mean, if I look back when when 90 years old, and the 11, 12 years I spent doing this, like, it's a small portion of my life, but it was significant, and I want to look back on it fondly. I don't want to look back on it with negative emotions.
Yeah, understood. Now let's go back to Chattanooga. You make a decision to stay with Taylor. He's crashed. He's clearly in a lot of trouble. A compound fracture of his leg, and the pictures are horrific. And you're there on the spot, and you make the decision to stop and wait with him in that moment. Tell me about what you were thinking.
I've thought about this one a lot, and it wasn't really a decision. It was the right thing to do, and that again is a product of my personality and who I was at the time, who I still am, and it's doing the right thing because it needs to be done, right? And it's acting in the time of crisis, acting in the time of high stress. Just being able to act methodically and thoughtfully is something I always trained myself to do.
Yeah.
And being there and that the act of it all was just something I thought was the natural piece, right? Like, that wasn't different. That wasn't out of the ordinary of my normal human behavior. It was all the things that came after, which I didn't understand. And that's just kind of also a little bit of a testament to the sport, is that everyone expected me to not be there. Right? Everyone expected me to keep racing, keep doing the things I was trained to do. And the sport forever, like, just tried to beat the nice out of me, right? Like, I generally am a nice and kind human being, but it doesn't really, at the time, it didn't really support that character. And so there was a lot of confusion, on the back end of, like, why I would choose to do that. But for me, it was just such a natural, and a natural response to the situation.
Yeah, and I can see that, and I think all of us as human beings probably would like to think that we would act in the same way that you did, but given the conditioning that you had, as you described, maybe not everyone would have. And there was that questioning of, like, well, why didn't you just keep racing? Did you ever, like, give it a second thought when people start bringing that up to you of, like, why didn't you just keep going? Did you ever think for a moment, well, what if I had have kept going? Or was it just so clear cut for you that human instinct took over and you made the right decision without question?
Yeah, I actually never thought about what if I would have kept going. I've just reflected a lot on that moment and the moment shortly after. I remember distinctly, finally, when everybody was gone, I was the last person there. Somebody throwing new wheels on my bike, and it was a broken pedal, a broken seat, but it was semi-rideable, and got down to the bottom of the hill, only to watch the race go by. It seemed at the moment the most unimportant thing in the entire world. Like, the thing that I wanted to pay attention to least was right there in front of me, and it was the thing that was my whole world for so long before that. And it gave that really interesting perspective of, okay, here's this thing that I do for a living. It's been my life, right? I've been doing it since I was a teenager, but it just doesn't feel right anymore.
Yeah. Oh man, what a moment in time that you experienced, and it has shaped a lot of the way that you've approached your life since then. I know that for a fact without even having to ask you. I want to stay in this for a moment longer, and I want to talk about the relationship that you and Taylor had before, and then how that was how that was affected following this moment, and kind of what that may be now.
So, our relationship before, and
just kind of give us a sense of the relationship before, and then how that was impacted following this.
Yeah, it's funny. Taylor and I were not best friends by any means. We were training partners. We had a really unique connection. me being one of the smallest riders, him being one of the biggest riders, like we had this funny connection where I loved training with him. In 2012, we had taken part in like a 2.5 week long training camp together locally here in Boulder, Colorado. It was designed to help get him to the Olympics and get him as fast and fit as he possibly could be. So everything we did, we simulated the Olympic schedule. So I think it was Wednesdays we did the time trial, like a simulation time trial race, and Saturdays we did a simulation road race. So we had a whole course set up in Boulder. We had 3 motor pacers that would like tag onto this group of 12. That if you got dropped, you motor pace back, and we like simulated these races. And just I think that dynamic, like we built such a we did build a relationship there, and then he went, like we all went off to do races. He went off to the Olympics, right? Like, I think 3 or 4 of the riders from that camp got selected for the Olympics, and it was just this really cool experience. And then, carried into racing, it was like, we were friends. We knew each other more than others. But yet we were still competitors, right? And so when we went into that day, like I was super proud of him for winning the TT National Championships a few days before. But I also knew, like, I knew to follow that guy, right? Like, as a competitor and as an athlete, you have to know your competitors as much as you want to beat them. Right. And I knew that he was a guy to follow. And so we had done countless numbers of descents at 60, 70 miles an hour in a super tuck position here in Colorado. Why not do it in Chattanooga on one of the best descenders in the peloton's wheel? Right. So there was an element of trust that we had built that allowed me to say, okay, I am going to go this fast behind this guy, and just completely let go of any thought or fear of crashing, because I trust him. Right. And it, turns out it wasn't his fault. It wasn't our fault, right? And mistakes happen, and I still would trust him to this day.
Yeah. And then did you ever talk about what happened? Were you able to kind of share your side of the story and have him share yours, or have you guys not?
Yeah, I mean, we go back and forth. Yeah, we've had some interesting conversations about it, in the sense that, like, we feel like cosmically connected in a way that I kind of know when something's up with him, and he kind of knows when something's up with me. And we tend to check in on like really important moments in our life. We don't call or text every day. If anything, it's once every few months or twice, 2 or 3 times a year. But I know he's always there, right? I know we're always kind of connected on this level. And we've both clearly processed on our own, right?
Yeah.
Like, Taylor's gone through his path, and I've gone through mine.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you opening up and sharing. I think it's a really interesting lead into the next part of the conversation, which is you really redefining and refinding yourself as a human being and tapping back into Lucas the human. Can you tell me about what that journey has been like from that moment until now, 6 years later?
Oh man, it's been a big transition. I remember the January 1st, 2016. That was the first year I was technically not, or the first day I was technically not a professional cyclist. I was very, very lost. But there was the day that crash happened, like a series of events were set into motion that things were going to just change my life, whether I wanted to or not. And it's one of those things where change happens in a moment. It's us as humans that keep them from actually happening or accepting them. Think of right now, right, with the state of affairs that the world is in, right? A change happened, or something happened, and everybody changed. Like our human behavior changed, right? And that can happen instantly. It's just the fact that, like, it's really hard to accept and adopt that change. So the moment that I crashed, things changed. The week after, I was supposed to be racing in Philly. I met my future wife, right? And then, a few months later, because I had not been racing after that, we met briefly, and then we met again, right? And we met more significantly the second time. And that is that. And sorry, she would kill me for getting the dates wrong. It was the week after that we had met for the second time, right? But that was the moment that we knew each other. We were kind of set up for each other. I wasn't quite ready to accept it. And then, we I went through this whole series of events to get to this place where I was okay with stopping, like racing. And then a whole year of transition where my wife was like, here is the time and the freedom to do this. Go ahead. Like, here's your space. And I didn't know what the hell I was getting myself into. Yeah. But like 9 months into quote unquote retirement, I didn't know what I wanted to do. Right. I thought everybody else had it figured out. I missed the boat. Where do I even start? You have a whole world available to you. Right. And you can start to pick and choose, but where do you even start? Yeah. And so I guess I just started with the bike industry. So 2 days before Interbike was to start, I just purchased a plane ticket, packed a backpack, got on the plane, and went to Interbike. I didn't even have a place to stay. The first person I run into as I walk into the building was Gary Erickson from Clif Bar. Yep. We had known each other previously throughout my pro career, and we decided that we would just sit down and have a quick coffee and chatted and caught up. And then I kind of entered the show and I gravitated towards Clif Bar because that was, well, why not, right? Long story short is it turns out there was a position open. I ended up applying for it, ended up not getting the position, got called back 3 months later, was like, hey, we have another position open for you. Would you be interested? And that was the moment in which I said, okay, it's time to commit again. That whole, like, I don't know what to do, all these things to do, the same thing I did with professional cycling. Yeah. And now here's an opportunity to narrow your focus. And they gave me that opportunity. And so we packed up, we moved to the Bay Area in California, and January 31st, 2017, a whole new world started.
Planned serendipity somewhat, from what I can gather. You don't know why you have to be somewhere, but you're planning on being there, and good things happen when you put yourself in good positions. Tell me about what that journey from January 1st, 2016 to January 31st, 2017. What were some of what was some of the work that you were able to do to get yourself in a place to be ready? And the reason I ask this is there's people who have lost their job. There's people who are currently athletes who are attached to a certain identity around their role that's taken away, results you're not able to race, all of these things. So I think there is a human opportunity for us to really assess and think about what we can be doing to not attach ourselves to our roles or our jobs or our results anymore.
That's one of the hardest things in the world to do. I'm not going to lie. And so for me, it was this massive identity shift. And at the beginning of 2016, I didn't know who I was, but I did know that I was no longer a pro cyclist, right? But I had identified as a pro cyclist for the longest time. And so what I did for that next year, and still doing, is unravel my entire pro cycling career and unravel who that person was, and really get down into the nitty gritty of why that person became who he was and why he wanted to be a pro cyclist, right? The easiest way I explain it to people is if you've seen Fight Club, you have your Tyler Durden, right? And that pro cyclist was my Tyler Durden, right? And that was this guy that all of a sudden was perfectly spouting off 8-second sound bites or really just like getting into the heart of the sponsorship model of pro cycling, right? Where it's like I could support a sponsor, like hit a soundbite, jump into media in any way that I needed to do. But it really was almost regurgitating the same thing over and over again. Yeah. And taking input from the outside and just saying, okay, this is mine, and I'm going to regurgitate it and put it to the world. When the reality is, the work that I've been doing is what do I believe in, right? What do I want to say? Who am I? And all these pieces that you start to uncover that I never knew were there. You start to go way back, and granted, I've done this with help, right? I've had a psychotherapist on my side for the last 6 years, and without him, I don't think I'd be where I am today. And without the support of my wife, and now we have our 2 beautiful kids, like this is my new purpose and this is my new path. Yeah. But it is hard, man. It is hard to let stuff go. I just say, you can't do it alone. Right? We can't go about this stuff alone.
Yeah. Kudos to you for the self-awareness to be able to enlist help and find help. And it's never easy. transitioning for me from, athlete to job to now dad to where does, everything else fit in is hard. People who have been furloughed or lost their job are going through it. Athletes are going through it. So it's never an easy task, but our evolution as human beings, which I can clearly see in front of me with you, is the most important part of what we want to do. We want to show up as our most fulfilled and self-aware people that we possibly can for the people that we love and that, and for ourselves, most importantly, really.
Yeah. I mean, look at what this opportunity we're given now, right? This like change happens. Like we are forced into ourselves. We're forced into our homes to be with ourselves, whether you're alone, whether you're with your family, whether you've lost something, we've lost someone, right? We are forced to see ourselves for who we truly are. You can't really hide when it's just you. There's no reason to hide, right? But that stuff starts to, it is that natural path of evolution, and it's hard, right? It took me 4 full years to really feel like I was no longer a professional cyclist, and I was okay with who I am today.
Yeah. How did that process impact your role? So, you're still finding yourself, you're the athlete marketing manager, you're dealing with athletes on a daily basis, finding your way through that, compared to now when you're a little bit more, in a place where you probably have different perspective than what you did when you first started. How has that evolution been, in your actual job and in your seat?
Oh man, it's been professionally. I've learned an entire world in the last 3 years, and I went into Clif Bar as a coordinator, which is an entry level position, something I could apply for straight out of college, and as a 33-year-old man with a child on the way. It was something that I knew I had to do, but I knew I was going back a few steps, right?
Yeah.
It's like I felt like I'd earned my stripes. I was top of my game, at least where I knew as far as I could get in the sport. Here I am pulling myself back, and I said, okay, Lucas, you got to go back to being a Cat 3, Cat 4, whatever it may be. You need to start working, right? You need to put your head down, tail between your legs, and just get stuff done. Yeah. And I actually remember writing it down. I compared where I want to be at Clif Bar to what the categories of racing would be.
Yeah.
Right? So I was like, all right, Lucas, you're like a Cat 4, Cat 3 right now. It's time to earn your upgrade points. And just went to work. I was placing orders and pulling warehouse shipments and, like real work. And that was something that I knew I just had to do, right? I was used to doing the work, right, to get to where we can start thinking bigger, start thinking more strategically. But I just knew that I had to just earn my stripes at Clif Bar. But yet I came in pretty bullish. I learned that after a while. Like I learned to just do my work. But I had all these great ideas, and then all of a sudden you realize like all those great ideas are great ideas that require an actual plan and strategy behind them. So here I am, 2 promotions later, and I feel a little bit more loved.
Yeah, I want to talk more about that, but I want to ask you, do you think that having that intense focus on just doing your job helped you find yourself and find your way out of that kind of mire that you found yourself in when you first left being a cyclist?
Yeah. I mean, it's purpose, right? You're working for something. And I think good employers provide that. Like they provide purpose. I think Clif Bar is known for leading with purpose. We have a values-based business model that is unlike anyone else out there. Look at what we're doing now with almost 14 million bars donated, to frontline workers, to food banks to community organizations across the country, across the world now. So that was helpful. I didn't know that at the time, but they were providing this space for me to say, here's your purpose, here's your focus, go to work, and you can also go home and you can see your family, right? And you can love your family. And don't forget to love yourself.
Right. Yeah, and you can switch off. It doesn't have to be the all-encompassing thing. You're not worried necessarily about what you're eating when you're getting to sleep, when when your next workout is. You've got a start time and an end time.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe not so much now. Back then, maybe not so much now.
It's different now. Yeah.
Tell me about that. So you've moved into this athlete marketing manager role. From what I understand, you're dealing with high-level athletes across a number of sports. How was your experience as an athlete being able to translate to that role and understanding what athletes are going through and their needs?
In some ways, what I had done is 100% relatable to what I am doing, and in some ways, there's this whole brave new world of things I am learning. From the athlete marketing side, we're part of the sports marketing team, right? But we are essentially, we're entrusted with the well-being and support of our athlete roster, which at Clif Bar is synonymous with the use case of our food. Right, we are the #1 energy bar for a reason. We've developed performance food for athletes, right, and for active adventure. And then we've also developed a line of everyday energy, which supports all of us in between our adventures, right? And so it's helpful to know what goes inside your head as an athlete and what the athlete sometimes is trying to say when they can't exactly convey that message. And so in some sense, we're this intermediary step between the athletes and our overall business strategy and our growth goals and objectives. But we help align those athletes to those other things, right? So even though from the outside, it's a lot of just relationship management with our athletes, on the inside, it's developing entire marketing campaigns around our athletes and what they do, but also trying to let them be them, because that's the uniqueness of athletes, right? And that's the understanding that where I was is you have to just let them be them. You can't force too much down their throats, and you can't tell them to say anything. It's really just working directly with them in the sense of building trust and a relationship.
Yeah. Have there been some memorable campaigns or ideas or things that you've been able to bring to life within that scope that you're especially proud of?
Well, I think the best thing that we can point to is, so right before this, our office shut down March 11th. So on March 9th, we launched our new Sustained Energy campaign. And our Sustained Energy campaign was a bit of a throwback to the original Clif Bar, but also a reminder of how this one little bar, this unique bar, kind of changed the landscape of performance nutrition forever. And that is still very, very relevant today. Plus we do all these other things. So it was the first athlete-centric marketing campaign we had done in the time that I had been at Clif, but probably in the last 6 or 7 years. And it was our Sustained Energy campaign. It unfortunately went on hold very, very shortly after, and so the world wasn't ready for that, or we weren't ready to give it to the world. And so we're going to slowly start getting back into that. But one of the cool parts was we changed the iconic climber on the Clif Bar package with 6 leading women athletes in their respective sports, and that was a really cool project to work on, because all of a sudden you get to put Venus Williams and Megan Rapinoe on a package, and you're also putting Katarina Nash, right, and Lakey Peterson, and some people that are kind of more in our core sport. And that's the uniqueness of working for a nutrition brand, is everybody has to eat, right? So our athletes aren't just cyclists, our athletes aren't just runners, right? Our athletes, I think we have over 20 different sports on our athlete roster, right? And that's just a testament to what we can do as a nutrition brand, but also the excitement of my job.
Yeah, I love that innovation. What was the reaction from those athletes when you brought that idea to them and said, hey, we want to change this iconic wrapper, we want to include you on there, here's how we're going to bring it to life? What was the reaction from those athletes?
I think they just it's hard to believe, right? It's all, and I don't want to draw this direct comparison, however it's been said before. So it's like being on a Wheaties box, right? That kind of that iconic shift into this we're going to put your face on a package. That's pretty cool. And I think the coolest part is when they're walking through a grocery store, right, and they're walking through the bar aisle, and all of a sudden there they are. And that's it's cool to see it on social media, it's cool to see it come to life digitally, but when you walk up and you grab that bar and you see that package, that's when they've had the most intimate reaction, right? And that's when I think they felt the most connected to it.
Yeah, that's really cool. I had Caitlin Looney Landisberg on the show. She was the founder of Sufferfest Beer, and the question I asked her was, what's it like seeing your product out in the wild for the first time? Or, do you still have that same reaction? And she said the same thing you just described, seeing it on a store shelf or someone drinking a beer on the patio, and you're like, man, that's my product. That's what I created. So, draw the parallels between the athletes being able to grab their own bar off the shelf is really cool.
Yeah, and keep in mind, like I work for the company. Like, I think Gary Erickson is probably the most proud of this all, right? Like, he is such an amazing leader, right? He's such a balance of humbleness and competition and hunger and drive and compassion and empathy. Like, he just him and his wife Kit actually just embody all of that. So the reason the Sustained campaign came to life was Kit and Gary stepped back in as co-CEOs back in October of 2018. And so part of my transition was learning how this business world works. But then all of a sudden I see how an entire business changing, right? And when the leadership changes, like the entire company changes, right? There's bigger attrition rates. Things start to shift. Some people who were leaned into the previous leadership, they weren't as aligned with the new leadership, right? Things change. And so like, not only was I going through change, the business was going through change. Like all this change is happening, and that's kind of the theme of what we've been talking about. But I just let it go, and here we are. We actually just announced a new CEO starting next week. She's amazing. Like from what we've seen and heard, we will all meet her next Monday, June 1st. But it's exciting to be part of all this change in a bigger company like this.
Yeah, and change will never stop. And we were talking before the show. You moved family back to Boulder, and then you haven't even really been in the office because no one's working in the office anymore. So it'll constantly be that. That was a memory I had from my time at Lululemon, was leadership change and directional change and campaign changes and all of these things. And you just have to kind of roll with the punches a little bit, but act out of innovation as well, and be planning ahead. Tell me about some of the athletes you get to work with. I know there's some amazing athletes on the roster. We actually had Lindsay Corbin, who left a wonderful message saying, "Yeah, Lucas, good job." I know she's been a long-time Clif athlete. Who are some of the great personalities? And you don't need to single out anyone in particular if you don't want to, but I know there's some great athletes on the roster that probably deserve a shout out as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, I love Lindsay and Chris Corbin are kind of the most dynamic duo I get to work with, and I love that. Like, they are just like this amazing support network of each other. Lindsay's an incredible athlete, an incredible chef. Chris, an incredible content creator, photographer. We're working with Lindsay as an athlete, working with Chris as a photographer. And he's supplying creative with images. Those are two really, really great people. I work with a full list of amazing athletes. Like, I love the conversations I have with Jeremy Jones, right? Those always tend to go another direction. He's very passionate about climate change, and he's the founder of Protect Our Winters. On another end, I have Kai Leitner, who's been this amazing up-and-coming climbing talent, kind of just missed his spot at the Olympics. And he's also going through a little bit of transition, right? Trying to figure out what his next phase of his sporting career is. You have guys on the other end of the spectrum, Timmy O'Neill, who's this iconic climber, activist, right? But again, he's going through transition. All the athletes are constantly going through change and transition, whether it's to another event, to another sport, to another phase of their life, whatever it is. So I just love being part of that, right? Like being able to connect with all of them and either help them or just listen and hear them out, right? Because that's half the job, is just making sure that they have somebody to talk to within the company. There's just so many amazing people. Like, I'm not singling out anybody in particular, but those are a few there. I love Scott Jurek, Elena Height, Katarina Nash. Like, they're like, I don't know. Clif Bar is known for for signing athletes that are they embody the same values and purpose that the brand does. Scott Jurek's been with us for 21 years. Right. Like, what other company has an athlete on the roster for 21 years? Unless you're signing a lifetime contract with Nike, right?
That's amazing. I also see that you're uniquely in a unique position where you can provide that perspective to them as they go through these change and these developments in their career, and can be a great sounding board and a conversationalist. So once again, plan serendipity. You're in the right seat at the right time.
I think so. I think there's plan serendipity. There's a level of trust in yourself, confidence in just taking on the opportunity. Not letting too much emotion get in the way, and trusting what emotion is real and what emotion is fabricated.
Yeah. Love it. This has been a fascinating conversation. I feel like we could talk forever. I want to talk more. There's more that I want to ask you, and I'm curious to know. But I'm gonna end it with 3 questions that I like to throw the way of my guests every day. So we're gonna launch into that. Question one: what's one thing that's changed for you during this isolation lockdown period that you want to keep once we move past this current phase into the new normal?
Comfort in the calm. I think there's just been a level of waking up and being comfortable with just sitting still that I want to continue.
How has that shown up for you? Is that manifested in being able to, read more books, write more stuff? Like, how does that show up for you in your life?
Books, writing, creating in my own way. I really like connecting with the earth, doing art, like doing landscaping, planting plants, baking bread, things like that, and also just really just connecting with my family. Like my little daughter, I taught how to ride her strider over this time, and we ride our bikes every day for a couple hours, and we go out on rides together. Which I'm like, she's not even 3 yet, and it's the most amazing thing in the entire world to see that.
That is cool. That's incredible. Love it. Question 2. What's one thing that you thought was important before this isolation lockdown period that you're happy to leave in the past?
The hustle. I really thought the hustle was just something you had to do. You had to just kind of get into it every day and just say, okay, today I'm hustling to do this, and I'm going to be exhausted by the end of the day. And I really it kind of plays off of number 1, but just leaning into the calm and recognizing that good things can still come out of, a strategic approach and a calm approach. It doesn't have to just be always one thing after the other, planning for the next, planning for the next, planning for the next. It's, there's been so many gifts of not having to plan that we've just said, okay, we just have to be with ourselves. And that's been the best experience.
Yeah, very cool. Number 3, what's been the most memorable moment of joy that you've had during this period?
I just want to cry over all the amazing moments that my kids and my wife have brought. There's so many, from working, from getting everything done, getting the kids to bed, to saying committing at 9 o'clock at night to having a quote unquote date night with my wife, where we don't start cooking dinner until the kids are down to sleep. Those have been such sweet moments where we've had conversations with each other that we've never had before in our relationship. And I think it's solely because we've given ourselves that opportunity, and we've put away the devices, we've put away any bit of planning. Like, a lot of our conversations were always about what our future is going to look like.
Right.
And so what we've been able to do is have these conversations about just what we're feeling, just putting everything on the table. Even if we're mad at each other or frustrated with something, those have been our conversations, and those are wildly different than trying to plan where you're going to be in 6 months.
Yeah.
Or even the next day, logistically. So that's been really precious.
I'm really proud of you for saying that. I have a similar feeling. We've got 2 adults working here in the house. We've got 2 kids who need our attention, and the communication that's required to navigate that has been on a level and at a level that me and my wife haven't experienced before. So instead of chipping at each other and getting mad at each other or fighting for our point, it's okay. We have less control than we would like here. What can we do to work together as a team and as a partnership to make sure that we're all getting what we need out of these times? And it's been amazing to be able to be a part of those conversations.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to just being so exposed. There's nowhere to hide. And even if you're alone, there's still nowhere to hide. You can't hide from yourself, right? We have a small house. I can't hide. I'm in my son's room right now. His crib's right there, right? There's nothing fancy around me. And that's half the beauty of it. It's just all right. Here I am. Here's my wholeness on the table.
Yeah, I love it. There's a power in the imperfection, I think, is the way that I'm kind of thinking about it. We know we're no longer restrained by having to be perfect. We can just be, and that's okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Love it. You're a legend. This has lived up to all of my expectations. I really appreciate it. It's been great to hear your perspective. I think you're a very thoughtful, soulful guy, and I can't wait to have many more of these conversations and stay in touch.
Thanks, Travis. I think when this is all over, maybe I'll turn the tables on you and do the same thing. Hear your story.
I'd love to.
I'm curious to know.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. Yeah, we'll plan it. Let's do it.
All right, Travis. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You're a good man. Thank you.
Talk soon.